Hello, and welcome to the Paging Dr. Cohen podcast with your host, Dr. Gordon Cohen, MD, PhD, MBA.
And so my goal is to make medicine as understandable as possible. No funny language, no complicated verbiage, just plain old conversation.
Let's call him the doctor.
Paging Dr. Cohen.
This is Seattle's Morning News. Dave Ross with Colleen O'Brien and Chris Sullivan. There is a new vaccine coming out, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Let's call in the doctor.
Paging Dr. Cohen.
Dr. Gordon Cohen, MD. So what is different about this new vaccine, Dr. Cohen?
So the Johnson & Johnson vaccine uses somewhat different technology. One of the interesting things about it is that it only requires a single shot rather than multiple shots. Now, we have to keep in mind that the studies on these vaccines, or when they were ready to be studied, occurred at different time points in the history of vaccine development. So the original Pfizer vaccine and Moderna vaccine were tested and were able to demonstrate about 95% effective. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine was completed later and was tested later. And so the Johnson & Johnson vaccine had to face the new strains, the UK strain, the South African strain, and even now there's other strains being described. For example, I heard about one that's appeared de novo in California. So there's these mutations that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine had to deal with, and they're showing efficacy. So it's proving to be not technically quite as efficacious, but it's being tested against more complicated circumstances. And it is just as effective as the Moderna vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine. It's just hard to know. They were just tested under different circumstances. The good news is that it's a more stable prep and it's only a single shot.
The main problem right now seems to be distribution. I'm seeing reports of long lines, people very frustrated about just getting an appointment. And then in other cases, people who happen to be in the right place at the right time, and they just get vaccinated out of the blue. I keep asking this, is there some reason that with the vaccine that doesn't require extreme refrigeration, you couldn't just have it in every drugstore?
Right. Well, I think they're trying to get to that point. And right now, the demand exceeds the supply. And it seems that the government is very focused on increasing the supply. However, if you actually look at it critically, there's actually a number of different studies and surveys that have been done that really suggest that the overall demand may not be really high enough, that we may only have about 60% of people or 60 to 70% of people who are willing to actually get the vaccine. Now, if we look at, for example, the flu vaccine, we know that only about 40% of people get it every year. It has been speculated that if we get to 70%, we'll have herd immunity. But the fact of the matter is, according to the CDC, we don't actually know the number. So it could be lower than 70%, or theoretically it could be higher. So I'm concerned about, are we going to get enough people vaccinated to actually be able to, get past all of this?
I assume at some point this will be combined with the flu shot, right?
Well, I don't know if it'll ever be combined with the flu shot because it's different technology, but it may be given at the same time. I think as a public health issue, there needs to be much more focus on education. There was an article published in Nature Medicine back in October, and at that time they surveyed people in 19 different countries, and they found that only 71.5% of people would consider taking a COVID vaccine, and that only 61.4% would take it if their employer recommended. Well, part of the reason is because people still feel like this vaccine came out too fast. And they don't understand that there was actually a decade of research that preceded it, and it was built on a platform that had been developed over a long period of time. Also, people in the 20s and 30s who know people who've gotten it and have seen that they haven't gotten that sick, they're saying, well, I don't really want the vaccine. Well, those are the people who are most likely to get it and then spread it to others. So I think we have some real challenges on our hand, and I think that there needs to be far more emphasis on education and educating the population than there does about just merely increasing the absolute number of vaccines that we have available. I think they need to happen in a coordinated way so that people, not only do we have the doses available, that people are actually wanting and desiring to get the vaccine and they understand why it's important.
After watching 60 Minutes last night, I can't imagine anybody saying, "Oh, I'll just take a pass," because they had some devastating stories of families that had been decimated by this virus, because it's what I hadn't thought about this, but unlike heart attack and kidney disease and other things that people die of, people die in clusters here, many times within the same family, because that's how it's spread. And the other thing is, in one of the cases, the treatment of a single patient cost $4 million, most of it covered by insurance. But it strikes me that the economic consequences of this could also be huge. I mean, what do you think? You're part of that system.
Right. Well, there's no question that that's the case. Look, I mean, we have so much technology available to us now to be able to support dying patients. And so we've talked before about the use of something called ECMO, which is a sort of heart-lung machine that we can use outside the operating room and use it in the intensive care unit to support patients for a long period of time. But one of the challenges with something like ECMO is that it's expensive and it's very labor intensive. You have to have two people with the patient 24 hours a day for the entire time that they're on it. And so there's technologies like that where you have a patient in an intensive care unit and you're using the full scope of resources, plus new drugs that are expensive, plus expensive technologies that the medical bills will run up quite quickly. So, yeah, and that's in addition to the burden that the virus is placing on the economy by shutting down the economy, and now the necessary relief to support people who are out of jobs. So the financial implications of this pandemic are, I mean, I think they're beyond the scope of anything that anybody can currently understand.
So I guess the important message that you want to spread is that even though this vaccine has appeared on the market in record time, it's built on the foundation of robust science, and it wasn't a slapdash job.
That's absolutely the case. It really is not something that was just thrown out there and the world is now a guinea pig, but rather it's something that was built on a very strong scientific foundation.
Well, thank you for the reassurance. Dr. Gordon Cohen, MD. Dr. Cohen, thanks.
Thanks, Dave.
If you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, please tell a friend, rate, comment, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Stay up to date on Twitter by using the handle Paging Dr. Cohen, or simply send us an email with any comments or medical questions to podcast@pagingdrcohen.com. This podcast also supports the American Heart Association. Please visit heart.org and consider giving a contribution by clicking the Donate Now button in the top right corner. Thanks again for listening, and stay safe.